All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. And you know what, Brian? You're not going to believe what I just fucking did.
What? What now?
So I needed a new couch, right? My couch is falling apart. It's kind of gross. It smells really bad. So I went to the most reputable store in the world, Rent-A-Center, and I'm now renting to own a genuine leather hot couch. Can you believe it?
Now is the time to do it. It's getting cold. You need something that's really going to trap in all of that heat.
Exactly. And especially recently, I've just been kind of falling asleep on my gross couch recently, very intoxicated, which is a thing that I'm known to do. So I needed a hot couch to fall asleep on.
I gotta say, Taylor, as your former roommate, I'm really taking exception to this bit, okay? I don't appreciate it.
It's not a bit, it's just reality, all right? This is just my fucking life now.
This is the manner in which I live my life.
Yeah. I don't judge your life. Oh, Jesus. But you know what? And then also on top of it, I decided I wanted to take an intro to philosophy class at my local community college. And with both those things, I think the perfect movie to review this week is an intro to psychology movie and a hot couch movie. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Let's go with remedial psychology.
Yes, remedial psychology. I'm sorry, philosophy, not psychology.
Philosophy.
I meant philosophy. Well, to be fair, this movie is very psychological and philosophical if you think about it.
Yeah, I felt like I was having a lot of psychological moments watching it.
So without further ado, this week's review is the 2002 Hot Couch Classic, Equilibrium. But before we get into our review, Brian, let's bring back our segment, Cringe Millennial of the Week.
Week.
Woo! Yeah! So, my cringe millennial this week is somebody who's not technically a millennial, but somebody who has very millennial tendencies. And Brian, I think you know exactly who I'm talking about, right? Their birthday was just like a week ago as of recording.
Oh, I think I know.
Hell yeah. So my cringe millennial this week is the infamous internet personality, Game Master Anthony. Now, to the audience at home, they may not know. Game Master Anthony is a gentleman who on his, I think it was
36.
I think it's 33rd, I believe. Yep, 33rd, because he just turned 49. On his 33rd birthday in 2008, February 28th specifically, he posted on the, I think it's Crappy Games forum, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And he posted, "Hey guys, it's my birthday. How about everybody just pretend to be various video game and movie characters wishing me a happy birthday?" Now, once again, this is a 33-year-old man asking this.
Just let me pull up. The phrasing is important. So I'm going to pull up the exact post. It'll take me 2 seconds. I'm 33. Bring it in, guys. Every character from every film, video game, television, and comic book comes in for a huge party. So 33 years old. This is ostensibly an unironic post.
Oh, yeah, there is no sense of irony to this post at all, in my opinion.
No, it's just a cool guy. It's just a dude who is into cartoons, he's into video games, and he is ready to celebrate his 33rd birthday by pretending to hang out with all of the tunes.
And this went on from 2008 all the way to, I believe, 2014. So this went on for a very long time, and it got into prominence on the internet because of, it was like on two obscure gaming forums, I should say. But the Something Awful user, the Twitter user, Jim P. Jorps, began documenting the story on February 28th, 2014. In 2015, Anthony turned 40 and received further attention from Something Awful and Jim J. Jorps once again. A screenshot of the, quote, celebration, unquote, circulated on the forum and Twitter as news about the film adaptation about Ready Player One. So I totally skipped this whole thing. So essentially this whole birthday celebration went on for years and years and years. And then eventually
Anthony was a beloved figure, truly a hero of the internet.
I was going to say, because of course, Brian, you were on Something Awful around that time and much earlier.
Yes, many years.
Did you all celebrate their birthday on Something Awful as well?
You definitely saw the Game Master Anthony post. I didn't so much in my kind of crew. Like, I didn't follow when his birthday was. That was just the thing people posted all the time because it was so fucking cool, right? Like, it encapsulated, and this is why it's a good pick for a cringe millennial. Although, again, Anthony, clearly not actually a millennial. It encapsulated something about that era of the internet and that type of nerd, and was so perfect for Something Awful. It's the type of person that Something Awful was basically created to gawk at, was that type of nerd. And I don't want to say anything. Gawk is the meanest thing I'll say because, by all accounts, Anthony is a lovely guy who posted on his little forum that I think was his forum or he was a moderator on for years. And he just had lots of friends and was celebrating his birthday. I know nothing bad about Game Master Anthony, but we were definitely gawking at the idea that this grown man wanted to hang out with Sonic and Mega Man and eat birthday cake. There is an updated version. I think he posted the same day as the original post on another forum where he says it's slightly changed. It says something like all the characters come in with all of the party supplies, including cake, pizza, and soda, which to me reads like he's specifying that none of one's doing drugs.
And then also a thing I totally missed. So on 2011, for his 35th birthday celebration, I believe, he apparently had just gotten diagnosed with diabetes. And it was mentioned in the description, a 35-year-old man who got type 2 diabetes.
Oh, Anthony.
He's been eating a little bit too much of that birthday cake and pizza, clearly.
Well, yeah, he's got all those friends over. He's got to make sure he's got enough for everyone. Lots of leftovers.
Absolutely. But I was mentioning the Ready Player One similarity. So when Ready Player One was a book and later became a classic film that, Brian, I know you love because, of course, I know how much you love Gen X and Millennial nostalgia. There were various people online who were like, wait, this is just a ripoff of Game Master Anthony's birthday celebration.
All of the characters are real and they're my friends. The movie.
And apparently around the 2018 when the movie was coming out, Twitter user Warren is Dead argued that the comparison was unfair between, of course, Ready Player One, Game Master Anthony's birthday, because the Game Master Anthony tradition was sweet, whereas the film seemed more cynical.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. Anthony truly just was like, I love all these characters. I would love to fucking party with them for my birthday. There's no element of like nostalgia. He's not cashing in on anyone's nostalgia except for his own.
Exactly, and if you're gonna be like a Gen X fucking millennial nostalgia guy, that's the best version of that to be.
Well, the thing is, too, I was thinking about this when you mentioned doing Anthony as a subject for the show. 2008 to, like, 2015, best time to be that type of guy at that age. The aging Gen Xer who was a big nerd, that's like when they were king of the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure, especially kings of the internet. Holy shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, but I am really glad, obviously, that we highlighted the not technically millennial, but very millennial-coded individual Game Master Anthony. And speaking of things that are very, very heavily millennial and very philosophical, let's get into our film review here. So, once again, this is Equilibrium. Came out in 2002. It was rated R, unsurprisingly, although there's not actually that much gore in this movie, but there's a lot of death in this movie.
I was actually pretty surprised that they pushed this to be an R rating because it very easily could have been PG-13.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, they could have, maybe obfuscated the death a little bit more. And I think there's a couple swears here and there. And if they took that out, this could have easily been a PG-13, like straight up. And this movie was directed by Kurt Wimmer. It was also written by him as well. And it was produced by Jan de Bont, which is awesome. You know Jan de Bont, right, Brian?
I don't think I do.
He directed Speed.
Oh, that's awesome. No joke. I love Speed. I won't talk any shit about Speed. That movie kicks ass.
Yeah, that movie's fucking awesome. He also, to be fair, directed Speed 2, which I've been told is not awesome. And it was also produced by a gentleman by the name of Lucas Foster, who, so we're just going to get into it right away. Kurt Wimmer is a writer and director, primarily a writer, but he's also directed a handful of films. He directed Ultraviolet, the 2020 Children of the Corn remake, and of course, this movie. And he also wrote various films such as The Recruit, Ultraviolet, Street Kings, Salt, the Total Recall remake, the Point Break remake, and the 2020 Children of the Corn remake once again. And he wrote Brian's favorite film we've reviewed, Law-Abiding Citizen.
This is like a filmmaker just primed to piss me off.
This is a guy who I think was birthed from a hot couch.
I mean, but the thing is that there's hot couch shit that I like. We'll get into it.
Yeah. And then I mentioned Lucas Foster earlier. So I just took the same description from Law-Abiding Citizen because he was also one of the producers on Law-Abiding Citizen. And he's a frequent collaborator with Kurt Wimmer. And he was also most recently one of the producers of fucking Morbius. I want to keep mentioning that because it's so goddamn funny. That's the most recent thing he did.
So, not the proper form to talk about it. Morbius pissed me off because the idea of a franchise based on like dark Spider-Man villains could potentially be really cool to me. Like, I'm sick of MCU shit, but I'm a big Spider-Man nerd. But the cynical memification of that movie made me so fucking mad.
I mean, to be fair, if any movie's gonna get clowned on and bomb, it might as well be a fucking Jared Leto-led movie.
Oh,
right?
yeah. No, yeah. I mean, fuck that. What I mean is, you know how they reshot the It's Morbin Time thing into the movie and then re-released it theatrically.
Yeah, they did. And then it still bombed.
It's fucking bombed. Yeah. Maybe we'll do a Jared Leto series someday because I hate that fucking guy.
Well, we'll only review movies where Jared Leto dies horribly. I think we should do that. And American Psycho
I'm
is one
down.
of those movies.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. So that we have that on the series docket and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, American Psycho and Panic Room. I know he dies pretty horrible deaths in both those movies.
Panic Room kicks ass. That's an overlooked film.
Oh yeah, very, very good. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely a very overlooked David Fincher movie, but definitely a solid one, that's for sure. And then speaking of solid, so of course you're talking about Jan de Bont earlier. So he's most known for directing such movies as Twister, the two Speed movies, the 1999 Haunting remake, the second Tomb Raider movie, and he also produced such movies once again as Speed 2, SLC Punk, the 1999 Haunting movie, and of course the legendary film Minority Report. And of course we had Robert on the show who was in that movie. So I wanted to highlight that one, obviously. And then going back to this movie. So this movie is 107 minutes long. It had a budget of about $20 million, but it only grossed $5.3 million. But that was actually the studio's fault. So yeah, there was some rumblings that apparently it was doing pretty well in Europe, and they didn't think it was going to do super duper well in America. So they only did a very limited release in America. And that's probably what crippled the movie altogether, in my opinion. Like if they had done like a big budget media circus for this movie, I think it probably could have made a shit ton of money, but the studio just didn't have confidence in it.
No reason in 2002 that this movie wouldn't have made some kind of profit in the US when you look at similar films that were doing well, or, at least pretty well.
Yeah, like, I'm just going to say it before we get into the plot synopsis here. This movie is obviously heavily inspired by The Matrix, aesthetically and plot-wise.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, of course, The Matrix was, like, a fucking gigantic success in 1999. Like, people have no idea just how insanely popular that movie was in 1999. I mean, it's still influential now, but how crazy it was in 1999.
That's a good way to put into perspective what was going on in film. Is that The Matrix was only a couple of years old when Equilibrium came out. That's a good way to kind of put into context where we're at, I think.
Exactly, yeah. And then you're talking about, people's thoughts. So on Rotten Tomatoes, this film has a 40% critic score, and it has an 81% audience score.
Okay, this is why we need to talk about this movie. I don't understand.
Is it like Law Abiding Citizen, where you're just like, no fucking way so many people love Law Abiding Citizen?
Okay, well, yes and no. So Law Abiding Citizen to me is like reprehensible, but I kind of understand that there's a type of person who thinks that's cool. With this movie, which I don't think is reprehensible, I think it's perfectly adequate for the most part. If you hadn't have told me your reasoning behind selecting this, I would have thought, who is the audience for this movie? Kind of. To be honest with you, this movie made me think of nothing so much as Tomorrowland, to be honest.
Oh, really? That's hilarious to me.
Kind of. I watched it and I was like, okay, this is a very competent film. You can kind of see every dollar on screen, not a buck wasted. And I would just go, okay.
The reason I wanted to review this more than anything else, so of course I had a little bit about, fucking hot couch guys and stuff like that. And, we haven't really dug from the well of hot couch guy movies in a while, but I wanted to review a movie, and I know I've mentioned Equilibrium on previous episodes, but the reason I really wanted to review this more than anything else is because, there's a lot of stereotypes about hot couch guy movies just being like really fucking stupid, lowest common denominator trash, right?
Unlike this.
Unlike this, and I'm sort of joking, obviously, and I know you're sort of joking, but like the thing is, though, is that like we've never reviewed a hot couch guy movie that like other hot couch guy movies are like, damn, that's like really fucking profound. This is the first one of those, and I'm gonna call this elevated hot couch because this is elevated hot couch.
I would agree with that. I when you say that, I see what you mean.
Like, of course we reviewed such movies as Gamer. Can't think of any other fucking hot couch guy movies at the moment we reviewed. Obviously, we reviewed a bunch of them, but like nobody has ever thought Gamer was like a smart movie. But people genuinely think this is a profound, smart movie out there. There are people.
Well, like, I can imagine the type of guy that we grew up around who thinks that. I can see him in my head. This is a movie that, it is literally about feelings and the inability to articulate them. I don't have to rack my brain to think of the type of guy who desperately wanted to see a movie talk about these things while also having badass martial arts and guns in it.
Absolutely, yeah. So like, and it's one of those things where like Kurt Wimmer, like of course, once again he directed Law Abiding Citizen, which is a very fucking stupid movie, and I don't think anybody really thinks that's like a smart movie by any stretch of the imagination. But obviously there are people who love that movie and will just fucking defend it to death. And I know for a fact that this movie has an even more diehard fan base than Law Abiding Citizen. And you want to know why I know that, Brian? Because in the 2000s, this movie had one of the most active fan sites of any movie in the 2000s. I'm not joking.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. I mean, something about Wimmer, right? It seems like he had like a direct line into like the id of what the lumpen proletariat.
Yeah.
And not even a particularly conscious one, just like he was able to directly key into the repressed emotions of a bunch of angry and inarticulate men.
Yes, exactly. It's like actually genuinely impressive how much he was able to do that. Like straight up, like this movie and Law Abiding Citizen are just fucking great examples of that. Because like, holy shit, he just basically made a movie perfect for a very specific, generic, mostly white male.
Okay, Law-Abiding Citizen specific, yes. Equilibrium, that's kind of the beauty of this movie from that perspective. Not specific. This movie could be all things to all men because it's so general in its conflict.
Yes, and in fact, once we get to the Amazon reviews, Brian, I want to talk about that because, yeah, like the synopsis of this movie, well, I mean, once we'll get into it, obviously, but like the themes of this movie are, you're right, they're so fucking basic, they're so generic, they're so all-encompassing. They could describe literally any ideology out there. Like, you could be a fucking based or cucked lib and think this is like a masterpiece of like your ideology. You could be a communist and think that. You could be a fucking anarcho-capitalist. You could be
literally
like anything, and you'd be like, yeah, this movie was made for me.
Yeah, and I guarantee you there were a lot of guys when this movie came out that just thought, this encapsulates my worldview.
They're like, yeah, I love trench coats and I love slick back hair, but like, sometimes I don't feel like I can say my feelings correctly. And then I just need to just go out there and tell the truth.
Just need to go. Sometimes I just wish instead of doing some badass gun kata, I could just talk about a beautiful painting.
This is like, yeah, like the poet warrior of like hot couch guys.
I mean, it is. It literally is that.
This is like if fucking like the philosopher king or something like that. Like,
yeah, it is. This is like the guy that was the hot couch guy that rose up and like liberated his people to talk about fucking pretty pictures and pretty music.
This is like if Marcus Aurelius slept on his couch every night.
Yeah. See, this is so much more interesting to me than the actual content of this movie.
Oh, God damn.
And there is entertaining shit in this movie. I'm not trying to be like a fucking downer here, but I was looking at reviews, and I'm sure you'll mention it, and I saw Roger Ebert's review, and I was like, oh, am I being more of a fucking drag about this movie than Roger fucking Ebert?
What did he give it?
He gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and he said, so, yeah, because I found it, and I was like, oh shit, I'm being a bigger dick than Ebert here. And he said, where the fuck is it? It's so good. Because this seems like a movie that you'd assume he would be a dick to. Equilibrium would be a mindless action picture, except that it has a mind. It doesn't do a lot of deep thinking, but unlike many futuristic combos of sci-fi and effects, it does make a statement. And I thought, I guess it makes a statement. It's good to feel feelings.
That is actually hilarious. I had no idea Roger Ebert gave this a glowing review. That is hilarious.
I wouldn't say glowing, but it seems like he liked it. At least for what it was, he liked it.
Yeah, and you know what? Talk about people who also love this movie. I know I talked about this, obviously, very rabid fan community in the 2000s, but I mentioned this to you. On IMDb, this movie has a 7.3 out of 10, and it has like 350-some thousand reviews. Both the original Evil Dead and Army of Darkness have a 7.4 with half the reviews of this movie on IMDb. People
That's so
love
crazy to me.
This movie.
Okay, another good way to kind of like, I think a good perspective, or at least one that I thought of while watching this, a thought that I often have about the movie Boondock Saints, this is better than Boondock Saints, but stay with me for a second, is that a type of guy loves Boondock Saints because they've never seen Coppola or Scorsese or De Palma or Tarantino really, and they kind of want to be into that kind of movie. So they watch Boondock Saints, and that's kind of like a very dumb version of that. So this is like for that type of guy, if he wants to get into The Matrix and Fahrenheit 451 or whatever the fuck, right?
And 1984, too.
Oh, 1984, big time. And literally any dystopian fiction ever. Except for, like, The Fountainhead, because this is so much more entertaining than anything I'd read from.
Yeah. Oh God. All right, but yeah, we've talked about enough of the people who love this movie. Let's just get into the synopsis here. So the film begins in Libria, a totalitarian city-state established by survivors of World War III, blames human emotions as the cause for the war. Any activity or object that stimulates emotions is strictly forbidden. Those in violation are labeled as, in the audience at home, this is not a joke, this is what they're called in the movie, as sense offender.
It's so awesome. You know, they should do a reboot of this, like with a feminist read, where it's all about like Reddit atheists who are really into logic.
Yeah.
Sense offenders is so awesome.
It's so good. In this world, sense offenders are sentenced to death. The population is forced to take a daily injection of prosium, which, does that sound like a medication that may exist already?
All of the made-up words in here are so fucking... They're so dumb guy smart. Libria or Liberia, prosium. It's so, like, creative writing class.
Yeah. But yes, this drug is used to suppress emotion. And the first trivia fact I have here is originally the drug prosium was named Librium, hence the term people of Libria is often referred to throughout the film. However, Librium turns out to be a registered trademark for an anti-anxiety drug.
Imagine if they'd used it without checking.
Yeah, the name was quickly changed to Prosium, this is what they said on IMDb, it's obviously not sly to us, but a sly combination of Prozac and Valium, which both have calming effects. Like, this movie thinks it's really smart, but it's really not.
Yeah, and I don't know if I think necessarily that the movie thinks it's smart, but it's funny to me that there's an audience that does.
Oh yeah, God, for sure. So Libria is governed by the Tetragrammaton Council, led by quote-unquote father, who communicates propaganda through giant video screens throughout the city. At the pinnacle of law enforcement are the Grammaton clerics, trained in the martial arts of gun kata. And the next trivia fact I have here is, and O'Brien, talk about hot couch guy. I think this is why that Kurt Wimmer has such a view into hot couch guys. So writer and director Kurt Wimmer invented the martial arts style gunfighting for this movie in his backyard.
That's so cool.
You know, that's the thing though. Every hot couch guy's like, yo, bro, look at this fucking move I just did. And they do some stupid shit in their backyard.
Dude, for real, I almost killed you just now. You're so lucky to be alive. You don't even know.
Bro, you don't understand. If you blink, I could just put my fist in your face. I'm just so fast, bro. I'm calling it fist foo.
For real, if you pissed me off so bad enough that I cried, it would be done for you. You'd be done.
I wasn't gonna just love this guy who's made multi-million-dollar movies. I'm gonna create a fucking martial art in my backyard for this fucking movie.
Couldn't he have hired a guru to train with or something?
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Even in fucking Mortal Kombat, they got actual martial artists to do all the fucking motion capture. This guy's just I'm gonna do fucking gun fu in my backyard and I'm gonna put it in my movie.
Gun fu.
Oh, God. So clerics frequently raid homes to search for and destroy illegal materials, art, literature, and music, executing violators on the spot. A resistance movement known as the Underground emerges to topple Father and the Tetragrammaton Council. Now, I love the first raid in this movie where... Oh, never mind. Let me just get to the characters first, then I'll talk about it. So, this movie takes place apparently in 2072. Cleric John Preston, played by Christian Bale, is a high-ranking Grammaton cleric whose wife Viviana was executed as a sense offender, leaving him as a single parent of two. And next trivia fact I have here is, Kurt Wimmer had originally wanted Christian Bale for the lead role as senior Grammaton cleric John Preston, and after seeing him in American Psycho. And apparently Christian Bale was not at the time, so they considered Dominic Purcell for the role, which is crazy for me because, Christian Bale wasn't a gigantic name in 2002, but,
yeah, this is pre-Batman.
Yeah, pre-Batman, and then also the next year he would be in The Machinist, which I think won an Academy Award, if I'm not mistaken. I think it did, but I could be wrong about that. So, he was, up and coming. So the idea that, he was almost not in this movie, to me, is wild, because I just can't think of anybody else as John Preston in this movie, even though he is literally, for a big chunk of this movie, a blank slate character.
Well, that's kind of even as Batman, that's kind of what Bale is known for, right? Is it a walking blank slate?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he is he's a phenomenal actor, obviously.
He's great. I don't mean that as a slight. I just mean a lot of his most iconic roles are, to some degree, him consciously doing that. That's what Bruce Wayne is. That's what the fucking American Psycho guy is, for sure.
No, absolutely, 100%. But yeah, definitely glad he was in this movie, because I'm just going to get my thoughts out there. I love this movie, but this movie's fucking dumb as shit. But at least Christian Bale is, fantastic in this movie.
He's great.
So following a raid, Preston notices his partner, Errol Partridge, played by the actor Sean Bean, save a book of poems by W.B. Yeats, or W.B. Yeats, is that it?
Yates.
Yates, okay. Instead of turning it in for incineration. So the thing I want to talk about is this specific scene. So they go into this underground lair, right, or whatever, I'm just going to call it, and they find like various pieces of art and whatever, and one of them is the original Mona Lisa.
Where did they get the Mona Lisa?
Well, okay, so I have a theory. So having watched this movie, tonight, obviously, and of course, previously a couple days ago before we recorded, I think that this movie probably takes place somewhere in like Paris or somewhere in Europe. But I think, and this is just my theory, that like Libria is an amalgamation of basically like all the world's population who were like brought into this like fucking totalitarian megacity. Because like there's a bunch of people in this movie have different types of accents, like different types of cultures are here and stuff like that. After World War III, like it just wouldn't really make much sense in my opinion. So I think that's why. So I think this movie takes place in Europe somewhere.
Like a vastly reduced world population or continent population kind of whittled down and concentrated to this area.
Exactly. Like the survivors were either like who were like escaping, famine and death and war in their home countries, all basically were lured into Libria with promises of this and that and this and that. And overall it was like built into a society after that. But like, it's like a post-apocalyptic society of like all cultures brought into here. At least that's my theory.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then as well, so there were apparently 200 people were interviewed for the role of Partridge, and filming had already started when Lucas Foster brought Sean Bean in. And, that's the thing. I love Sean Bean. He's also a great actor, but he's one of those actors where you know exactly what's going to happen to him in the movie. So I wish they kind of hadn't chosen him because, like, you see him and they're like, oh, that guy's going to die in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. No disrespect to Bean, but this is the character you see and you're like, oh, this character is here to die.
I've literally seen one movie where he doesn't die at the end. I'm not joking. And that, I believe, that is Silent Hill. He doesn't die at the end of Silent Hill.
Ironic.
Yeah, right? In fact, I think he's actually in the second Silent Hill movie, if I'm not mistaken. I think he is.
I only saw the first Silent Hill movie.
Honestly, that might be a good elderly millennial movie review because we haven't really reviewed any video game movies yet.
So if we do Silent Hill, and then we can kind of like get into like not game lore, but sort of how it contrasts with the games and what works and what doesn't, I think that'd be really good.
Hell yeah, dude. He follows Partridge to the Nether, a term for regions outside the city, and finds him reading the book. After seeing Preston, Partridge claims he gladly pays the heavy price of feeling emotion. I wonder if that's gonna come back later on in the movie. Preston then executes him as Partridge slowly reaches for his gun. And, I mentioned that, so that's actually a line that gets said, I think, 2 or 3 times throughout the movie. It's like, are you willing to give up everything just so you can feel emotions? And he says,
that made
I
me
would
so
gladly
mad.
pay the heavy price. That made you mad?
Repeating it made me so mad because we get it. How fucking dumb are we?
We have to remember this was made for hot couch guys who aren't in tune with their emotions.
That's true. That's fair. Had to make very clear to them all that it was okay for them to have feelings while watching this.
Yeah. Hot couch guys at home, sometimes you have to go beast and sicko mode, but sometimes you should just like feel like, I got feelings and shit, bro. Like,
sometimes you need to go baby mode.
Yeah. Oh, God. So later on, Preston accidentally breaks a daily vial of prosium and is unable to replace it before going to the next raid. Brief episodes of emotion set in evoking memories, stirring feelings, and making him more aware of his surroundings. He intentionally skips additional doses of prosium, hiding them behind the mirror in his bathroom. Partridge is replaced with an ambitious, career-conscious Brant, played by the actor Taye Diggs, who expresses an admiration for Preston's uncompromising work as a cleric. On a raid, they arrest sex offender Mary O'Brien, played by the actress Emily Watson, to Brant's surprise. Preston prevents him from executing O'Brien, saying she should be kept alive for interrogation. Brant grows suspicious of Preston's hesitation. Now, I want to get this reel out of the way real quick, because I did see in some of the Amazon reviews, there's a lot of people who were like, oh, well, in a society where people don't feel emotions, a lot of people are feeling things whenever things happen in this movie. So here's the thing, right? My theory on that as well. I have a lot of theories about the world of this movie. I was not involved in the fucking like fan site back in the day. I promise.
I was going to ask.
But I have a theory. So, it's later, spoiler alert, we're just going to get it out of the way. So the main bad guy of this movie, he says, that he's not actually taking Prosium. He is like a fully feeling, but like obviously very ruthless fucking villain. And that's the thing though, is that like in any society where they're like, hey, do this thing, it could be, you know, fascist, could be socialist, could be, you know, liberal, whatever, right? Like any society that's like, well, you should do this, peons, they never fucking do that themselves. The security forces never fucking do that themselves.
Yeah,
so I
of
think
course.
there are wide ranges in the leadership and the security forces that just aren't taking Prosium, or maybe taking a different variety so they can be more effective for the security forces. Let's be real here. Like, you see Brandt, he smiles and he gets angry a lot in the movie. He's just a very ruthless individual who's either not taking it the way he should be taking it, or he's taking a different variety that may not be available to the public. It's not stated otherwise.
Actually, that makes sense. Potentially, like, maybe taking a version that, like, suppresses maybe not all of his emotions, but say, like, his empathy or something that he might see as, like, a hindrance.
Exactly, because in this like all-knowing security force society, like taking a drug that basically takes away all of your emotions, aka your like sense of like survival and like all these various things, that would make a pretty shitty fucking security force.
Yeah, it actually would not make security very strong at all, because, I mean, that's why soldiers are basically brainwashed and forced to bond together in an almost romantic way.
Yeah, if everybody's like an emotionless fucking automaton that doesn't know how to work together, they're gonna get overrun pretty easily by any force that doesn't have that hindrance. So people are just like, oh, fucking these people enforcing these things, they clearly don't follow the rules. And it's like, exactly.
I'm glad all the fucking continuity geniuses are in the reviews for Equilibrium.
Oh my God. Just get ready for these Amazon reviews, Brian. They're incredible. Trust me, they are some of the best I've seen, and I'm not exaggerating on that one. They are incredible. So many brain geniuses on Amazon for this one.
You know how I love the reviews.
Oh, I know how much you fucking love the reviews, Brian. It's always your favorite part of the show. You always mention that.
I mean, at this point, I've come around to where it almost is my favorite part, especially in this episode, because it's going to make me feel something.
Yeah, in a movie where nobody's meant to feel emotions, the Amazon reviews are going to make you feel a lot of things.
And I would almost say that on its own, this movie actually captures that world very effectively, because it didn't make me feel that much just watching it.
Oh, God.
No, this is just to get... So I've talked before about how I think that the 2000s were basically a wasteland for studio films. I hate the gray aesthetic. I hate how serious everything looks. I hate the lack of color. You pointed out, and I do agree that that's intentional in this movie and it serves a purpose, but I still didn't like it.
No, and that's totally fair. Like, even though, like I said, it fits the aesthetic of this movie, it almost feels like it's like, well, we have a movie without emotions, and we already have a really shitty fucking aesthetic that's in this period of time. That's perfect.
Exactly. It's like that's already what every movie looked like, and so at least this movie had like an excuse to look that way.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get back to the plot synopsis here. So later on, Preston begins to feel remorse for killing Partridge, develops an emotional relationship with O'Brien, and seeks atonement. He uncovers clues that lead to meeting Jurgen, leader of the Underground. Jurgen, played by the actor William Fichtner, is planning to disrupt Prosium production to spark a populist uprising and convinces Preston that father must be assassinated. Vice Consul DuPont, played by the actor Angus McFadden, who, fun fact of the day to all my Saw heads out there, Angus McFadden is also known as the main victim in Saw 3. I believe his name was Jeff, and also the guy who killed Jigsaw.
Friend of the pod, Jigsaw.
Absolutely. He is just so fucking cool. And to the audience at home, we will review one of the Saw movies one of these days. I can promise you that. It's on my list, because that is a very elderly millennial film. It is the yearly horror franchise that all elderly millennials saw. I can basically assure you of that.
Maybe we should start in September and try to blitz through them for October.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, I think this is a great idea. But yeah, so Vice Consul DuPont meets with Preston to reveal that there is a traitor in the upper ranks of the clerics. Although DuPont initially suspects it as Preston, he assigns him the task of unmasking the traitor. Relieved, Preston accepts and promises to locate the underground leadership. Meanwhile, O'Brien is set to be executed, and Jurgen advises against interfering, believing it could sabotage plans for the revolution. So there's a bunch of things that totally skip over this part of the plot synopsis here. So at one point, of course, Preston is getting various emotions. He's catching feelings. You know what I mean?
He is catching feelings, yes.
And there's various raids that happen in the underground. At one of them, he finds a puppy and brings it back. And then he's bringing it back, and he's like, okay, well, I can't keep this dog around. So he goes back to the place where he initially found the dog and lets it go at night. There's some security.
And you fucking
forces.
know. You fucking know that some hot couch guy with his poorly trained mutt, his mangy ass dog, who he's like, oh, she totally is like a guard dog. She's totally a great guard dog. Man, I'm going to teach her to hunt. He's watching that. He's like, that's just like us.
doesn't want to get it spayed or neutered because that's like just more natural.
Yeah, no, that's for her to decide.
But yeah, he brings back the
My mom
puppy.
didn't ask me, so I'm asking her.
Yeah. And then security forces come up after him, and he's just like, wait, you have a dog? We're going to kill you because you're a sex offender. And then that's when, like, some of the more awesome action scenes happen. Like, there's just, like, two guys pointing shotguns at him, and he just turns them around and just, like, shoots them in the head. I love the action scenes in this movie. I wish they were, like, edited better, but I love the action scenes in this movie.
I wish they were edited better, but I like the action. Yeah, I like the gunplay shit. There's some John Woo, not some, there's some pretty heavy John Woo influence in it, which I like, and some heavy Matrix influence, which I guess also, it's kind of redundant with John Woo. I think the way they're edited is like shit. I've said it before, 2000s action sequences rather, are like video games. They're like cutscenes, and it drives me crazy.
This movie is very much like a video game.
The actual like action set pieces and some of the choreography and stuff, very cool. The video game editing did bum me out.
Well, speaking of some of the cool things, so interestingly enough, Brian, this was done basically with all practical effects. There were no wires. One of the scenes in this action scene I was just mentioning where he like jumps in the air and like shoots two guys and then like lands on his feet or whatever, that was actually done using a trampoline. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That's awesome. To be honest, that's one thing we can say probably for the 2000s in action films and horror films is that probably will never happen in a major studio film ever again.
God, no. Like, it'll happen in foreign films, but it'll never happen in, like, an American, like, big-budget film ever again.
Yeah, and it'll happen, in indies and low-budget films where they maybe just either decide they would rather do practical or it's just easier because they're, a very small crew. But any film with any kind of budget in the U.S., especially a genre film, it's all going to be CG from here on out. And we're worse off for it.
I think the closest thing we'll probably get is like a David Leitch movie or whatever, or like, Nobody, for example, which is definitely a movie on the list that we're going to review someday, Brian.
Nobody's on there. Yeah. I also have Nobody on the list. I think that'd be good.
That movie does, I think, pretty much entirely practical effects, and that's a fucking great action movie. Phenomenal.
Yes.
That is a very dad-core movie.
Oh, yeah. That is actually a movie for aging Gen Xers.
Oh, God, for fucking sure. Yeah, like the guy who was in fucking Mr. Show and
Mr. Show.
And of course, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as like an action guy, abso-fucking-lutely. And then also there's another raid later on where Brandt basically kind of leads Preston into getting more of the underground members killed. And also there's one, it's like a really blanket and you'll miss it, but there's one of the like underground members who's like pushed up against like some like gas canisters or whatever, and he like puts up his hand to get shot. Do you remember that scene, Brian?
I do.
That's the director and writer, Kurt Wimmer.
Oh, that's a great cameo. I respect it.
Well, it's a funny one because, like, you look at the guy and he looks like a buff surfer dude, so he really sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And then at that point as well, there's a handing off of guns to Brandt for him to execute these guys that he doesn't even do. He makes, like, the grunts do it while watching Preston. So he's like even though Taye Diggs is, like, a fairly minor character in this movie, Taye Diggs also does a really good job. I think he's generally a good actor in everything I've seen him in.
Yeah, I like Taye Diggs a lot. I think he gives a standout performance in this movie, in my opinion.
For sure, especially for an unfeeling automaton, although he's not actually unfeeling, but that's neither here nor there.
Fucking psycho.
Yeah. But yeah, so now we're back to the actual plot synopsis here. So O'Brien is executed. He can't get to her in time to like argue his case. I don't know what he could even argue in the first place without blowing his cover. I don't even know why he did this. This is a pretty dumb decision on his part. But basically, he's trying to stop the execution. And then after, she's executed, he goes out to the fucking public and he just has an emotional breakdown and starts crying. And to be fair, it's a dumb scene, it's contrived, but I think it's effective enough because, of course, Christian Bale is just a phenomenal actor. So basically, anything he attempts is going to be fucking good, even in schlock like this. So him just breaking down and crying, like a soundless cry, basically.
And also in the context of this movie, it works because this movie, even though it is about a world where there is no emotion, it is so hyped. The fucking musical score, the actual performances when it does get emotions, it is so over the top that it fits right in with anything, I think. And yeah, I would say it's a pretty affecting scene, again, largely because of Bale. He's able to cry in a way that's pretty contained, which you aren't really expecting from a movie like this.
No, yeah, absolutely. Just once again, great performances from everybody. Even Jeff from Saw 3 does a pretty good job. Do you remember Saw 3?
No, they all kind of run together for me.
Oh man, when we watch Saw 3 is easily the most like fucking visceral and like mean-spirited of any of the Saw movies. I think pretty easily. And Jeff is just such a fucking contemptible piece of shit in that movie that I really don't want to see him succeed. He's like the one victim where I'm just like, oh fuck this loser.
That's the classic EC horror thing. You make the fucking victim a real piece of shit so you can really relish their death or their torture or whatever.
Oh man, and also the fact that he's the one that killed Jigsaw. Like, just God, what a bad decision. What an awful decision.
That kind of sucks.
But yeah, so anyways, so after he has his emotional breakdown, he is arrested by Brandt, because once again, Brandt is basically watching him the whole time. And he's like, oh, I see a precedent. Just like, he does that like stupid thing where I love, where it's like, there's like a punch or a kick or whatever, and then it like just fades to the next scene, like he gets knocked out or something. I love that trope, because it's just so dumb.
Yeah, that is like right from the like action playbook too.
Yeah. But Brandt brings Preston to DuPont. Preston tricks DuPont into believing that Brandt is the traitor. Following Brandt's arrest, Preston is told that his home will be searched as a formality because, of course, there was an accusation that he is a sex offender, so he has to go through the home. He rushes home to destroy the hidden vials, only to discover his son, who stopped taking Prosium after his mother died, already has. And apparently, he hasn't been taking Prosium for 4 years and was able to hide it. Because, you know that's thing, Brian, I think you and I can all agree. The one thing that little children are very able to do is hide their emotions very easily.
Yeah, what the fuck? This didn't make any sense to me. Is this kid like on the spectrum?
Yeah! Is he like a textbook psychopath? Like, what the fuck?
I don't understand.
I mean, to be fair, he is, because he like rats people out perfectly willingly. So he kind of is just like a textbook psychopath. But yeah, just bizarre. Like, that was the one thing in this movie where I'm just like, okay, come the fuck on.
Because there is, I think, mostly an internal logic to the world of this movie.
Agreed.
But I didn't understand that.
No, very, very stupid. But hey, whatever, the movie's mostly done.
Yeah, we're moving right along at a clip.
Hell yeah. Jurgen tells Preston to capture the leaders of the resistance to regain government trust, hoping it will get Preston close enough to assassinate Father. Now, we didn't mention Father. So Father is, just this guy who's just projected on a TV. He's like, the fucking like grand leader. He's like, like the supreme leader, like a very like Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il type guy.
He's Big Brother.
He's Big Brother. Exactly. And he's just the guy who basically says every government edict to the populace. But you never see him. He's just on a computer screen. So Preston is granted an exclusive audience with Father, only to discover that Brandt was not arrested. It was part of a ruse to expose Preston and the underground. DuPont reveals he is Father. Preston, I am Father. No!
No! That's impossible.
That would have been great if they alluded to. I mean, this would have been stupid as shit, but they should have done that.
That would have been awesome. That would have made me very happy.
Yeah. So DuPont secretly replaced the original Father who died, and that is Cabal doesn't take Prosium to suppress emotion. Of course, we mentioned earlier, which once again makes sense in any kind of totalitarian society, and even every society. Like every fucking, security force or leader, they're just like, hey, peons, you do this, but we're not going to do any of that. But they say
like COVID restrictions.
Exactly. Holy shit. That is a really good way to put it. Like, fucking Gavin Newsom can have a dinner with 50 people in like summer of 2020, but everybody else has to stay home and eat ramen. Fucking asshole.
Obama had his birthday party with Bruce Springsteen.
You know what? If we want to really punish Gavin Newsom when we send him to the fucking prison island from Face Off, we'll make him have to send every birthday to fucking Game Master Anthony.
Aw.
We'll have him
play all doesn't deserve that.
Yeah! Oh, God, that's awesome. But yeah, so Brandt taunts Preston, asking how it feels to betray the underground. Enraged, Preston fights his way through an army of bodyguards to DuPont's office, confronting and killing Brandt in a katana battle. Now, this is a really great action scene just in general. It's one of the few that's not edited like complete shit. So it's really cool, the gunfight where and you're talking about a video game. That is a video game like final boss fucking like gauntlet scene where like a million guys.
I thought the same thing. It is so final level. But this is a good scene. For me, this scene is like the payoff to the movie. I basically sat for the movie film. When this happened, I was like, all right, finally.
Exactly. And then once again, he gets to Brandt and he kills him in a katana battle. Now, the trivia fact I have here is the scene where, because it's literally just like 3 fucking like sword swipes and he kills Brandt. And apparently it was a kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark situation. So originally the fight was supposed to be much longer, but Taye Diggs had like some sort of scheduling conflict. So they just had to like shoot something really quick. And there's also rumors that it wasn't even him. It was just a body double.
It literally was a Raiders situation, huh?
Yeah. And then after he kills Brandt, DuPont and also before we mention it, the last like cut is like to his face, and he just like gets on his knees like anime or something like that. And then like he turns his head and his face slides off in one of the few CG moments of the movie, but his face slides off. It's so
that made me laugh. That was so funny.
And also later on, well, never mind. Let me get to this real quick, and I want to mention something about that specific part. But so DuPont and Preston engage in a gun kata showdown. And of course, it's like, yeah, the ultimate Grammaton cleric versus like fat, like autocrat. Of course he's going to lose.
Ultimate battle. Yeah.
Preston wins as DuPont pleads for his life, asking, is it really worth the price? Paying homage to Partridge's last words, he responds, I pay it gladly. Mary O'Brien says that too at one point. So this is the line that's been incorporated it's the rule of threes. This is said 3 times throughout the movie.
There's probably some hot couch guy hardcore band from the early 2010s that has an album called I Pay It Gladly.
Oh, for sure. There was like some like butt rock new metal band in 2003 that made a song called I Pay It Gladly.
Was there really?
No, I know that for a fact though. There has to be.
I'm imagining more like a Cro-Mags inspired NYHC band.
That could be too. It could be. I'm going to look that up actually after we're done recording.
I hope there is a song inspired by this movie by a butt rock band or a like hot couch guy band called I Pay It Gladly.
Hell yeah. So Preston then destroys the command center and broadcasts father's propaganda. Preston watches with satisfaction from above as the underground destroys Prosium manufacturing plants, signaling the beginning of the revolution. Now, before that scene when Preston kills fucking Brandt and DuPont and he's like walking out of the room, it's like just a blink and you miss it, but you see fucking K-Dig CG face on the floor.
That's so awesome. I missed that, but I wish I hadn't. I have to go back and see that.
Yeah, go back to it. It is hilariously bad. It's like one of the few like genuine visual effects that's like awful in this movie because it looks like a fucking like 1994 CG graphic. It's so bad.
That is just such a silly choice to make.
It literally looks like his headshot, and then like they like CG it to the floor. I'm not joking. He's like smiling. It's hilarious.
That's like an old school forum avatar.
I bet you somebody has like fucking like cropped that out and made it their avatar. I guarantee.
I hope so.
All right, so yep, that is the plot of Equilibrium. And before we get to our final thoughts, Brian, oh my God, I'm so excited for these Amazon reviews. Holy shit.
It's the moment I've been waiting for.
Hell yeah. I actually have 5 of them, and we might go through all 5, but we might not. So the first review here is from Victor M. Passenheim, who gives us 5 stars. And the head of the review says, more relevant today than ever. And the body of the review says, and once again, get ready for all these reviews, because there's so many brain geniuses in all these reviews. The body of the review says, the dialogue at the 36-minute mark. It's the dogma of leftists the world over. The society depicted here is the globalist wet dream, what they've worked so hard in 2020 to achieve. People conditioned in this case with drugs to suppress their humanity in favor of quote-unquote unity and quote-unquote peace, with the trade-off, of course, being freedom, humanity, and one's God-given rights. The indoctrination is nonstop in this movie. Just how the media operates today with any quote-unquote approved message, in parentheses. Can you say COVID-19 or our airtight elections, just to name a few, on parentheses? Regardless.
Wait, I thought all of the woke cultural Marxists were super emotional and they cried all the time.
That's the thing, this movie can mean anything to anybody.
Yeah, it literally can mean anything.
Regardless of what the facts may be, don't question it. Just censor yourself. And if you don't, others will do it for you, even to the point of destroying your life in the process. So,
well, this guy clearly thinks that any movie that he's watching reflects his values. He would say this about whatever movie he was reviewing.
This guy was absolutely a January 6th.
I mean, this is Jan 6 vibes.
Yeah. And then speaking of somebody who was also at January 6th, though, our next review here is from Captain Ned Blakely, who gives us 5 stars. And the header of the review says, and this is even just reading the header of the review made me laugh, so I wanted to put it in here. So the header of the review says, volunteerist delight. And the body of the review says, 50 million stars. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Bullet, bullet, gun. And great to see the... And great to see the bad guys for who they really are. Governments are just people. People who rob other people and start wars, not stop them. It is great to see someone recover from the Milgram experiment and someone that is able to do something about it. The only flaw was spinning this as if only Nazi governments do this sort of thing. All governments are funded by theft. All governments either dupe or force their tax slaves to fight other government gangs. The problem won't get solved by shooting the puppet. The problem is to stop believing in puppets.
This guy's so fucking cool.
You know what, Brian? I think that's the thing.
This is like some like fucking crass lyrics.
Well, that's the thing, Brian. I think you and I can both agree on something, is that private property, which is something that volunteerists believe in, has never been involved in wars. That's never been a reason for wars at all. Property rights, that's never been a thing involved in wars.
No, actually, if more people, if everything was private property and there was no public property, there'd probably be less war.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, it's like fucking consensual transactional obligations. You know what I mean?
And it always works out.
And then the next one here, and once again, this person absolutely was at January 6th. I believe this is fucking QAnon shaman. This is the next person here. And this is also just another just fantastic 2000s username. Davy Dissonance gives this 3 stars.
That's so fucking good.
Yeah. And the fucking header of the review says, ... of an accurate depiction of what America will look like in 30 to 50 years, thanks to SJW fascism and their ...
When was this written?
I could not tell you, but SJW, it would have to be like 2015, 2016 at the very earliest.
Gamergate era.
Absolutely.
Maybe a little before.
And the body of the review says, sort of an accurate depiction of what America will look like in 30, 50 years, thanks to SJW fascism and their intent to annihilate freedom of speech, thought, art, and so forth. A totalitarian wet dream realized. Enjoyable, but hardly a classic. The dog scene tore me up.
Nobody is talking about the actual thing of this movie, which is emotion. They're like sidestepping it to talk about what they want to talk about.
And you know what, Brian? I included 3 of these in here, but I'm not kidding. I went through pages of every review being like this.
Like, so you could read anything onto this movie if you wanted to. If I wanted to, I could read this as like a Mark Fisher, like Marxian, like acid Marxist tract, because that's how open it is. But none of these guys are actually talking about what the movie is about, which is about feeling and emotion. They're not even, that's like, if there is a point to this movie, that is it. But none of them are even addressing that component. They're like almost avoiding it to talk about the woke SJWs, who, I'm sorry, of all the things these guys say about wokeness, they don't ever accuse it of being emotionless.
Yeah, they're always like, oh, facts over feelings. Like, they always mention feelings. Yeah. Like, you know, once again, as we mentioned earlier, this is a movie that you could just graft a million ideologies onto. But, like, if you think this is like a libertarian movie, this is not a libertarian movie. I'm sorry. Like, you could see it if you're kind of stupid. But, like, it's just not a libertarian movie. But it seems like all the libertarians are fucking talking about how great this movie is.
I mean, I don't think this movie is really anything. Like, it's broad enough you can project whatever value onto it. I don't really think, I mean, even less than other movies, I don't know if I think this movie has almost negative politics to it.
Well, you know what, Brian? Because I think something that this movie very clearly does have politically, this could 100% be a Scientology movie.
That's true.
Like,
those fuckers hate psychology.
Absolutely be it. Like, the idea of creating a sci-fi movie where a world without feelings and emotions because of drugs, that is a Scientologist wet dream.
Are there any Scientologists affiliated with this in the cast or crew that we found?
I looked up a little bit. I couldn't find anything distinct. It doesn't say anything about Kurt Wimmer specifically. And he was the writer and director, so he would have the most say-so on that.
Okay, well, that's good, because you do bring up an interesting point.
Like, if a Scientologist were like, this was my favorite action film of all time, I'd be like, that makes a lot of sense.
You'd be like, of course, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh, God. And then, you know, talk about people who may be Scientologists. So our next review here is from Arbiter, who gives us 1 star. And the head of the review says, complete nonsense. And the body of the review says, the premise of this movie is to portray a society in which emotions are banned, but all the characters are clearly exhibiting emotions all the time. This movie simply doesn't understand what emotions are or what their expression looks like, which I kind of agree with the last part of there. But once again, I posited my theory on this is a world where either people's, like, they're not taking fucking Prosium effectively, or they're taking a different one, or they're just not taking it all, or maybe it has different effects for everybody. Like, it's not necessarily a plot hole that people feel emotions in a world without emotions.
I agree with you, Taylor. Also, whenever I hear a review or a criticism of a movie like this CinemaSins type shit, it reminds me of this time as a child I was watching Billy Madison with my father, and we got to the scene where Billy Madison is in kindergarten listening to The Puppy Who Lost His Way. And my dad defiantly threw his hands up and said, there is no way any school would allow him to go to class with all of these little kids. As if he was the smartest guy in the world.
That is awesome. That is such a dad thought. That rocks. That is hilarious. A plot which, obviously I'm saying this is an obvious point. It's meant to be absurd.
Yeah. And he goes, there is no way. And that's what I think of anytime I hear a criticism like this.
That is actually awesome. That rocks. I'm not even joking. I think that's really cool.
That's one of my defining like memories of my dad.
Holy fuck, that is awesome. I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket forever as like funny fucking film criticism.
I'm glad that I could share that with you because it lives in my mind.
It lives in your head rent free all the time. Oh god. And then speaking of people whose various things live in their head rent free, so our final review here is from 45 Cubs, who gives this film 1 star. And the body.
What? Excuse me?
Yeah, 45 Cubs. I was thinking, like, wait, is this like a furry Trump supporter?
Probably the baseball team, I guess, but that's what I thought too.
I was like, damn, this is a Trump supporting furry. What the fuck? Or like, isn't Cub like a gay thing specifically?
No, Cub is a bad furry thing.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it is like a fucking degenerate Trump supporting furry. But the head of the review says, what are you people watching? And the body of the review says, I'm not sure exactly what people found about this movie that would leave them with the impression that this is worth watching. This is a horrible movie. Do not waste your time. Embarrassingly stupid. Low budget. Special effects. Felt like work sitting through this garbage. Not worth the rental price. Who would buy this crap to keep? And you know what? I bought this movie twice. And also, I do want to talk about some. I didn't put it in the reviews here, but there were a lot of reviews who complained about the home release of Equilibrium. So this movie has never actually had a good home release. The only home releases it's ever had is by Mill Creek. And you know Mill Creek, right, Brian?
Yeah, I think so.
They were the people back in the day where if you went to a Walmart fucking discount DVD bin, it was always Mill Creek. They also did those like
Bare
50,
Bones.
Yeah, those like 50 horror movie box sets or whatever. And those were the
have some of those on my shelf right now.
Hell yeah, dude. And those are the only people that have ever released Equilibrium on both Blu-ray and DVD. In fact, the Blu-ray specifically is so bare bones, it doesn't even have a scene selection.
That's bizarre, man. Like, because, I gotta say, like, this came out in 2002. Early and mid-2000s are the golden age of films on home media. Like, everything had special features. Everything had a commentary. Everything had a little mini documentary,
You know what another movie that's like that, very unfortunately, is Faculty. It's just so lame. Like, movies that we've reviewed and movies that, I know you said this isn't like your favorite movie of all time, but like, I mean, I love The Faculty and I like this movie.
I mean, to be honest, I think every film should have a filmmaker's commentary because I think that can be such an interesting way to watch a movie and learn about it. There are movies that during, what I would consider the golden age of DVD and home video special features, which I'd say was the 2000s, I would buy movies that I wasn't particularly interested in if they had a director's commentary.
No, same, yeah.
Maybe says more about me than the films.
Yeah, I don't really listen to a lot of them these days just because I don't have the time, but when I used to...
They don't make that many anymore. Fucking X and Pearl didn't have commentaries on them. Jordan Peele movies don't have director commentaries.
That sucks so fucking hard. That's
Yeah,
awful.
It sucks.
All right, but yes, so that is the end of our Amazon reviews. Now, Brian, do you have any final thoughts before we get to our pluggables?
This isn't a bad movie. It's not. The 2000s, particularly in action, one of my least favorite periods of film. I hate the gray aesthetic just of the era. I hate how serious everything feels. I have seen much worse films, action films from that era. What's interesting to me about this is how strongly, like you said, people respond to this. Because for me, this is a movie that I had heard the name of and I forgot it existed until you mentioned it, Taylor. This is a movie, like many films from this era, it just vanished from my consciousness. And to know that there is just a community still going on, still talking about this movie, it looks like now even, that's fascinating to me. And you just I think it's because there is a demographic of people that were so starved for like stories, about their emotion. There's a type of probably young male viewer that saw this and was like, yeah, that's how I feel because I can't talk about my feelings. And that makes me pretty happy that this film exists if that's the case.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I first heard about this movie, I want to say, probably somewhere in high school, maybe like early adulthood. And I remember like seeing a review from some like that guy with the glasses channel Awesome Adjacent. And they were talking about this movie and they mentioned like the fan community. And I remember going into the fan community and being like, there were just pages and pages and pages of threads about like various theories and fan fictions and like alternate reality stuff. And I'm like, for this movie, really? And then I watched it and like, I never thought this movie was like the most profound, best movie of all time or anything like that. But, you know, as like a 16, 17, 18-year-old fucking asshole, I was like, oh, that's a good movie. Like, I could see why people fucking like it. And, you know, same thing with Law Abiding Citizen. Like, I remember seeing that movie back in the day when I bought it on fucking DVD or whatever from Mega Media Exchange and being like, yeah, this movie's like fucked up and weird and whatever. And then finding out years later that people fucking loved both these movies like to death. And I'm like, holy shit, I totally forgot about these movies too. We gotta fucking talk about them again. Although I will say for Equilibrium, it's a little bit different because probably since maybe 2018, 2019, I've watched this movie about once a year. Like, it's one of those movies, it's like a comfort movie for me. Like, I can put it on. It's like a movie that I don't really have to think that hard about. It's got just enough meaning to make it interesting, and the performances are once again pretty solid.
Yeah, I've got some movies like that. That would be like True Romance or American Splendor for me, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So like if somebody was like, hey, this is the movie that, you know, when I was 17 and I was getting fucked up smoking fucking weed out of a soda can, and I was like, oh, like movies can make me feel emotions, I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude, good for you.
Yeah, when you put it in that context, that makes so much sense to me. Because when I watch this movie, you know, at 32 now, and I'm thinking, okay, and this is already a movie that I'm kind of predisposed to be, you know, a little dismissive of, which is my own internal bias, but like it's just the way it is. I'm kind of like, okay, and it did make me feel similar to Tomorrowland, where I'm like, okay, this is an objectively like well-made movie, which is what I think about it actually. So I don't agree with people who give it bad reviews in that way. I actually think it's overwhelmingly competent, and I just think, like, what's the response to this? Unlike Tomorrowland, though, clearly this does hit with a demographic very hard. And like I said, I find that really interesting.
Yeah, that's actually a really good counterpoint because, like, yeah, Tomorrowland is a movie that tries to appeal to everybody, but fails pretty hard at appealing to anybody.
Anyone. It's baffling.
But this movie tries to appeal to a lot of different demographics, and a lot of people have gotten a lot of meaning behind it. Like, yeah, for a movie that, like Tomorrowland, although this movie obviously had a much lower budget, but this movie also bombed pretty bad. But the fact that it has such a diehard fan base is pretty impressive.
Was this like a middle of the day cable television movie?
Yes, I think I saw it on Sci-Fi Channel back in the day.
I had a feeling, yeah, that must have been, you know, how it started to build up a cult following. That makes a lot of sense.
Or like TNT or something like that. It was some fucking midday
FX.
Like, FX or something like that. Yeah, no, I definitely remember seeing this movie on TV for sure. This was definitely a TV rotation kind of fucking movie.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That explains a lot. So if you're in a certain age bracket, a certain demographic, you're home in the middle of the day, you don't have a lot to do, and you're restless, and this movie comes out, I could see it really hitting you at the right time.
You're like, hell yeah, I'm unemployed and it's my Tuesday where I don't do anything. I gotta smoke crank out of an apple and watch a movie.
Yeah, you've got some fucking smoke, and you're flipping channels, and you see that gun kata at the beginning. Ooh boy.
You're like, damn, I just got done jacking off to Alexis, Texas. Let me watch a movie on cable.
And you're like, this guy's just like me.
Yeah. Like, you know, man, you know, if that was my wife and she was a sex offender, I would have hit her, bro. I would have made sure she was never caught, dude.
I would have been so good to her. You're like writing her letters.
You know, man, I would have made her feel a lot of feelings, if you know what I mean. I would have given her like triple-digit orgasms. Oh, God. I know we always joke about these fucking hot couch guys, but these were all people we grew up with. Like,
yeah, these were our friends.
These were people I, like, spent my entire, like, later high school years with. Like, one of my best friends at the tail end of high school, I literally saw him smoke tobacco out of a soda can, and he just puked everywhere right afterwards.
Why would you smoke tobacco out of a can, though? Like,
I don't know.
That is so hot couch. But yeah, these are the guys who just are mostly kind of, you know, pretty good guys. And in some cases, pretty intelligent guys intuitively who just, boy, did not have all of the tools at their disposal, you know?
No, they didn't. Like, at least in my experience, they were all like, I mean, overwhelmingly like just working class, like kind of dopey, dumb, like young white guys. Like that's the best way I can describe them.
Yeah.
And
who like had ambitions of being intellectuals, maybe.
Exactly.
In my experience.
And then they're like, oh yeah, dude, I'm going to be like a fucking philosopher soldier. And then they joined the military and like just jerked off for 7 years. That was the hot couch guy who smoked tobacco out of a soda can. He later joined the Navy.
That checks out. At least, I mean, so I hope he liked it.
Yeah, right. Oh, shit. All right, so with that all the way, let's get to our pluggables. So, of course, you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com. I don't ever post on there, but hey, you can follow me if you want. And also, you can, of course, follow us on both Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are uploading every single episode of the podcast simultaneously to both platforms. And as well, as always, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father GoFundMe page. I think we've talked about it a million times, but we really want to see a sequel to Lucifer and the Father.
Please check out Lucifer and the Father. We're still, in touch with Scott and the rest of the crew. They've been great friends to the show. And please watch the Lucifer and the Father, the first episode. It's a really good time, truly. As for myself, again, follow the Millennials Are Old pod page on Instagram and the Facebook page Millennials Are Old. I am going forward going to be kind of looking for more cringe millennial content. I'm kind of pushing up on that. So I would like to start accepting submissions, or at least viewing submissions for cringe generational content. Not necessarily millennial, but cringe content you see on Twitter, on TikTok, where the fuck ever, relating to specific cringe boomer, Gen X, millennial, or Zoomer behavior. If anyone sees something that's really just awful, especially if it's recent, please send it our way on the Facebook page or Instagram page, because there's just so much out there.
God, there really fucking is. Holy shit. And then also, Brian, I think you do the Instagram and Facebook pages, right?
Yes, Millennials Are Old Pod on Instagram. This is the page, Millennials Are Old Pod. And then the Facebook page is just Millennials Are Old. Uploading everything on there as it comes out, again, along with, the links to Spotify and YouTube. Any current events things going on that are relevant to the show, tangentially or otherwise. Again, any cringe boomer interactions that I'm finding on the Facebook page, although that seems to have died down. I might have to go into the Billy Jack page and stir the pot a bit.
Hell yeah. Brian, I got an idea. Make a post that says Billy Jack would have stuck up for the Bud Light person. I can't remember their name at the moment.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah, be like, yeah, Billy Jack would have just karate chopped anybody making fun of Dylan Mulvaney.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, God, hell yeah, dude. But speaking of various feelings that generations feel, I feel very tired. And I think feeling that tired would make me a sense offender. So I'm going to fall asleep before I get arrested and liquidated. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, I am feeling lower back pain. I am feeling hunger. I am feeling like it is time to log off and go to bed.
You know what? That's actually, before we log off here, that is a plot hole. Is feeling hungry a sense offense?
I guess that's a body offense.
Yeah, just somebody being like, oh man, I could really use a good meal. Do you feel hungry? No, I don't feel hungry. I need to eat. Do you feel that you need to eat?
I bet they really had to, in this society, work out some of those kinks early on.
Yeah. Is kink a feeling too? No, let's not get into that right now. Well, speaking of kinks,
definitely.
I think a series that we're going to be going into will deal with kink and a certain generation. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yes.
All right. With that ominous note out of the way, have a good night, everybody.